What makes something feel like genius? It could be a performance that really moves you, or a design that just feels right, or a decision that cuts through the noise. It's not just about talent or intuition, it's that the person behind it is using multiple senses. And the more senses that you bring into what you create, evaluate, or decide, the deeper your insight, the more powerful your work, and quite frankly, the more genius your creation feels. Using multiple senses is probably the most overlooked strategy of genius I have uncovered in my Genius Lab after working with some of the world's best. But today, I'm going to show you how it works and how you can use this strategy too. By the end of this video, I'll show you how to take whatever it is you're good at to the next level. Welcome to the Everyday Genius Show. I'm Taryn Voget, and if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. This is the third video in a 5-part mini-series I'm doing on the 5 strategies of genius I have discovered in my Genius Lab. And you can watch that overview video called 5 Strategies of Genius on my channel. But today's focus is about probably the most underestimated and certainly most under-discussed strategy of genius, which is using multiple senses. And yet, this is what takes something from good to really extraordinary. So, what are multiple senses and why do they matter? Well, the senses are the sense of sight, sound, taste, smell, touch, and feeling. And when we can incorporate more sensory information into what we are doing, we can really create something that has more emotional impact and creates alignment on more layers. And by including more sensory information, it also creates more nuance in our work and really takes our creation or our work or our performance to the next level. So I'm going to share with you 3 interesting real-world examples of geniuses that have done this well, and then I'm going to show you how you can do it too. The first example of someone that I think uses multiple senses really well is Rick Rubin. Now, Rick Rubin is an absolutely legendary music icon, and he's really shaped modern music. He's responsible for, among other things, bringing hip-hop mainstream. And he's worked with Beastie Boys and Run DMC. He completely reinvented Johnny Cash's career. He's created hits for Jay-Z and Adele, and he has won 9 Grammy Award-winning songs. In 2023, he came out with a book called The Creative Act, and in my opinion, he has an incredibly deep and intuitive understanding of how genius and creative genius really works. I think Rick Rubin's genius is in producing music that just feels alive. But to do that, he uses multiple senses. So for Rick Rubin, it's really a full body experience, and it's a full body sensory experience when he's producing music. He talks about this. He says he's listening for how the music feels, and he wants to feel it in every cell of his body. I think a great example of this is when he was producing Metallica's Death Magnetic song. He wanted every riff just to really land a punch. And for him, creating an emotional impact with a song is much more important than technical perfection. He also uses the sense of sight when he is producing music. Now, he's got this recording studio in Malibu, California with this killer ocean view. And he has these artists come in and he asks them to play, and he watches how they play, and he's paying attention to the visual cues and kind of the overall vibe that that artist is giving off. And then he incorporates all of that into how the song sounds so that it captures that visual element as well. In addition, he talks a lot about using visual inspiration, whether it's from art or from sunsets, and incorporating that because for him, music is both visual and emotional storytelling. And I think a great example of this is Adele's hit song, Into the Deep, which is where, and he produced it, where every note just kind of feels cinematic. And you wouldn't think this, but he also uses the sense of smell when he's producing music. So he's got this Malibu studio, and when he opens the door, you can smell the ocean breeze. And it creates this whole vibe in his studio. And he really attributes that laid-back California vibe to the really cool laid-back vibe of the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Blood Sugar Sex Magic album. And so all of that goes into producing a song. But then here's where I think his strategy gets really interesting, is once a song is produced, he then listens to it in multiple different environments. So he'll put his headphones on in the studio and just be really present with just the music and notice how that makes him feel without any distractions. And then he'll play the music in his car. And in that environment, how does the music sound? What does it make him feel? And then maybe in a coffee shop or at a club or all these different environments. And he's taking in all of the sensory experience of those environments and then hearing the music, noticing how it makes him feel. And then he says when he edits the songs based on that, he's usually subtracting things so that just the few emotional elements and the few notes that are emotional can really shine through the music in every environment. And that is how you create 9 Grammy Award-winning songs, is that your songs sound great no matter where you're listening to them. Another really cool example of a genius is Misty Copeland, who is quite a ballet genius. And she's the first African American to become a principal dancer at the American Ballet Theater and have a lead performance in Swan Lake and The Firebird. She also created this incredibly popular Under Armour campaign and wrote a best-selling memoir. But for her, I think her genius is really about blending athleticism with emotion. And to do that, she brings multiple senses into her dance and her creation. She talks about music being really important to her dance, and she says she needs to feel the music in her bones. And when she feels the music in her bones, she can then dance to that beat. So what she's hearing comes through as a feeling and then comes through as a movement so that the audience can feel the music come through her. And it creates a really cool emotional experience for the audience. She also talks about dance being visual storytelling and how her body paints the scene. And those are very visual elements in dance. But to do that, she's really focused on every detail. It's the costumes, it's the lighting, it's the set. And it's looking at the stage from the audience's point of view and noticing how each movement is going to pop. And when all of those elements, visual elements, come together, along with her feeling elements and the music elements, it really creates this emotional experience for the audience. She's even talked about using the sense of smell in her dance. When she was in the Nutcracker, she said the set had a very snowy scent, and that she tapped into that snowy scent to really bring that feeling through her and in her dance so that the audience could feel that way too. And so all of these different senses come into creating dance that feels really emotional and feels really alive and gives the audience an incredible experience of all of these elements. And it's what makes her, quite frankly, a genius. A third really cool example is one that my younger audience might laugh at if they even know what it is, but it was the iPod that Apple and Steve Jobs came out with. Now, the iPod, for my younger audience, was really an iconic sensation when it came out, and it was really the first time you could listen to what Steve Jobs said was 1,000 songs in your pocket. But Steve Jobs' genius was in using multiple senses to create his products, and this is no more apparent than in the iPod. So for him, when he was designing the iPod, he said he wanted it to feel approachable and friendly. Now, this was a technical device, but he wanted it to feel friendly and approachable. And so what did he do? He took the iPod and he designed round corners and kind of these rounded edges, and that felt friendly and approachable. And then he created this really cool round dial in the middle that also felt friendly and approachable, gave it kind of a glossy finish, which was very eye-catching. But then, and this is where the younger audience is going to laugh, he created these earbuds that at the time were just the sexiest, coolest things that had come out. Now, prior to the Apple iPod earbuds, earphones were just these sort of tacky things on strings with these little foam ends on them. But when Apple designed the earbud, they got rid of all that and they just made this really sleek design that just beautifully fit into your ear. And it was just such a hit, and you could just spot this iPod with the earbuds from across the room, and it was just iconic. It later informed the design for the iPhone, which is also a very iconic design. So in addition to what it looked like, it was really important what it sounded like. Now, obviously, this was a device to listen to music. It had to sound great, but the team tested countless earphone designs to make sure that the clarity was just perfect. But in addition, on the iPod itself, you might remember it had that round dial that had a click. and you could kind of click through the music, but it didn't just have a click, it had a tactile, it had a touch to it, and you could feel how it clicked through the music catalog. And you could then click through your music very intuitively by hearing it and feeling it. And that was a really cool part of the design. He also used the sense of smell in the design, and this was in the unboxing experience. And so when you got the box and you opened it, it smelled really clean, and he had this really beautiful soft packaging feel to it so that it just felt really smooth and elegant. And he said he wanted it to feel like opening a beautiful gift. And so by incorporating all of these senses into the design, he created something that was just so iconic and sold 400 million units. 400 million. And to this day, still probably goes down as one of the most successful product launches of all time. And it's because he used multiple senses in the design of his product. People often think that genius is about IQ, but it's really not. Genius is more about creating something that has a feeling to it, that feels genius. And things that feel genius often feel that way because they are hitting perfectly on every sense that we have. And that is why it is such a powerful strategy of genius to use multiple senses. So how can you take whatever it is you're interested in to the next level by using multiple senses? I think the most simple way to think about it is to put it into two categories. The first category is, what are the senses that you're using when you're creating, evaluating, or deciding something? And then the second way to look at it is for the person or the consumer or the audience on the other side of your creation, what are the senses that are activated within them as they experience your creation? So as you are creating something, what are you seeing, and how could you enhance more of what you're seeing and add more layers to what you're seeing? What are you hearing, and how can you do the same? What are you tasting or smelling? Now, these are often more obvious in things like cooking or wine tasting, but you might be surprised if you use a little creativity how you could incorporate the sense of taste or smell into whatever it is you're creating, evaluating, or deciding. What's the tactile? What's the feeling? What are you feeling? And then what's the emotion that you are experiencing as you are creating, evaluating, or deciding something? And so going through each of these senses and seeing what you're already doing, and then how you could expand that to be even greater with that sense. And that just takes a little creativity sometimes. Then on the flip side, think about, what's the person on the other side of your creation experiencing? What are they seeing? What's the visual they're seeing? What are they hearing? What are they tasting or smelling? What's the feeling, the tactile feeling they have with touch? And then what's the emotional feeling that they're having? And could you take your creation to the next level by enhancing any of those senses on the part of whoever's experiencing your creation? Now, this could be with anything. This could be with sports. It could be with writing. It could be with computer coding. It could be with cooking. It could be with literally anything that you are interested in. There's always a way to add more senses in. I think we do this very intuitively. Like, I learned to play pickleball a couple of years ago, and when I was first learning, I was just really focused on what was I seeing, and then as I got better, it was more, what was I feeling, and how did the paddle feel, how did the ball feel, how did the air feel, what was I hearing on the court, how did my partner move their feet. And you just go through all of these senses as you get better, and you start to intuitively add more in. And then when you get really, really good, you realize that all senses are really activated. But when you can be more conscious of it and more consciously take it to the next level, then I think it gets really interesting. Now, sometimes it's about subtracting things. Now, if you look at my studio set, it was very intentional to make my set feel clean and simple. And it's because I didn't want a lot of visual distraction in my work, so that the person watching this could really create their own mental imagery from what I was saying without a lot of visual distractions. So the set for me was actually a process of simplicity or subtraction so that the person could experience more of their senses without being distracted as they're watching me. So we can play with the things in all these different ways using multiple senses. I hope that strategy of genius really helps you see how you can take your work to the next level. As always, thank you for letting me share my greatest passion with you, which is sharing this information. Hit the subscribe button so that you can get notified of when the next episode drops, which is going to be on using multiple points of view to get more genius results. I look forward to continuing our conversation about your genius on the next episode.